Hello there everybody, how are you doing today? Chris from Wicked Repairs. Thank you very much for watching my channel. I appreciate all the support, I appreciate all your comments. I do try to reply to them as prompt as possible. I do appreciate you giving me thumbs up on my videos and subscribing to my channel. It helps me out a lot. I appreciate it very much. I appreciate all the feedback. Sometimes people suggest things that maybe I didn't do or something. I appreciate that. I don't take it as any negativity or people saying anything bad about the things I'm doing. I do appreciate any feedback that you have. Sometimes there are jobs that I do that it may be the first time or second time I do it, and somebody might suggest something that might help me out, which also helps other people out that might read the comments. So I do appreciate your comments, do appreciate you following my channel. If you want and you like this channel and you want to see anything else that I have, you can follow me on Facebook under Wicked Repairs as well. And today we have here a 2007 Yamaha Warrior. It's a street bike, a motorcycle, and it has a broken belt. Belt is not even here. Bike was dropped off without the belt, which is fine anyhow, it's broken. So we're going to be replacing the belt. So I'm going to show you how to replace the belt on it, as well as adjust a belt on this bike. This is it right here, Yamaha Warrior, and this is pretty much going to be the same or real similar to any Yamaha belt-driven motorcycle, whether it's a Stratoliner or a Raider, a Warrior, whatever you may have. It's going to be generally the same idea. This one, I'll just run you through some things real quick. You do have to loosen up on the axle to get the old belt off if you have a belt on, or even to install the new one, you're going to have to loosen up on the axle and the adjusters to bring the belt in to start off fresh with adjusting the belt. This one we are going to have to take off this top pipe on here to get the axle out of here. Okay, there's not enough room for this to push back or even easily remove the cap on there. So that's just 2 bolts here, 2 bolts here, and this top pipe will come off. We're probably going to have to take it off completely. Some pipes, depending on what you have, you might be able to just loosen them up and slide them out of the way. Then another thing you're going to want to do is have a flat jack like this I have on the lift, and we're just going to put it right up on the frame. The frame is really straight on these. So you shouldn't need any shims or anything to try to keep the bike straight on the jack. It will jack up very straight. And we're going to want to take off this pulley cover here. And we're going to want to pop off this cap that's going to access your axle. We're going to want to pop off the guards to just make it easier. So we're going to start doing that. So for right now, it's not critical to jack the motorcycle up very high. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's just barely off the lift. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to loosen up the axle nut. I'm not even going to take this off all the way. Just want to loosen up to be able to start off fresh to adjust the belt. It's a 27mm nut. Got a big 27mm Craftsman wrench. And just loosen up the nut. And this side adjuster is going to be a lot easier to get to without this pipe here. You can get up there. You can see I've already loosened it up, but you can get up there and get it loose. Okay, so I've loosened up the lock nut, but I haven't touched the other one, the adjuster bolt, because can't quite get in there with this pipe in the way. So we're going to get that pipe out of there. Alright, so I jacked the bike up just like a 1/2 inch maybe. Loosen up the 27mm axle nut with a 27mm wrench. And I loosened up on the lock nut with a 12mm. I can't really get to the adjuster because of this pipe in the way, so I'm going to have to take off this pipe. Will make it a lot easier to be able to access that adjuster. So if you come on the other side of the bike, you can see here we've got the lock nut here. I'm going to back up on that. I'll just turn in the adjuster, and it's not going to move much now because the other one is all the way backed up, of course, but we just want to loosen up the lock nut and then drive the adjuster nut in a little bit, because obviously the old belt that was on here has probably been adjusted many times in its lifetime, and we want to make sure the new one goes on okay. We could adjust it properly from the beginning. So I mean, that's probably good enough for now anyhow, but now the lock nuts are loose, the axle nut is loose, and now I'm going to take off the front pulley cover, and it's a series of 5mm Allen bolts, and we're going to do that. So we took off this the cover, front pulley cover, okay, 5 bolts, the 5mm Allen heads. I was able to wiggle it off no problem. Depending on clearances being tight and stuff, you may have to remove the passenger foot peg, you may not. I just wanted to point out in here that these little rollers and pins do come off. This is here for just deflection on the belt to keep it from, you know, if it gets loose popping off the pulley or anything like that. Make sure that they go back in there after you put the belt on. And there's little peg holes right there that they sit in, so when you put the pulley cover back on, those little holes need to line up with this. Of course, the only way to line those up is to get the cover on properly anyhow, where it's going to line up with the bolt, so it usually just pops right into place. But take those out, it doesn't matter which way they go, the bottom, the top, they're identical. So we're going to be taking off the pipe now. I'm going to work on taking off the top exhaust pipe, but you are going to have to take off these as well. It's an 8mm Allen head and a 14mm socket here, so you are going to have to take those off as well as popping this cap off to be able to get to the axle on. So when I initially looked at these pipes, they're Vance and Hines pipes. I thought they were separate pipes, but they are actually not. Right about here, they are fused together for, you know, a cross chamber from the front and rear pipe. So they do come together. So we are going to have to remove the entire pipes, which is fine. But this one had 4 13mm bolts right here on this back plate holding the top and bottom pipe on the bracket. 2 8mm Allens here. In the front, we're going to have 2 12mm sockets. Okay, and then we're also, because of this guard and the floorboard, we're gonna have to remove this, which is 2 14mm bolts. So we probably don't have to remove it completely either. We could probably just loosen up the bolts and let the floorboard kind of fall, and it should give us enough room to move the pipe by. If not, then we just remove it. So we're gonna work on that now. So I did indeed have to drop the floorboard completely, which it's probably the most difficult part of this job so far, because somebody put different bolts in there than what OEM Yamaha would use, and they were not metric bolts. They were a standard size head bolt. Usually it's always a 14mm, or sometimes you see an 8mm Allen. This was well, I used a 15mm actually, was what it was. So I used a 15mm long socket, but it wasn't easy to get to one of the bolts because of the way it's designed, with somebody switching it out. So, but either way, it wasn't terrible either, and we got the pipe off. The whole assembly, always be careful when taking the pipes off, especially with something that's got a black motor like this, so you could easily scratch. If you have to, put rags around it or painter's tape on it or something that's going to protect the motor. Another thing that I always do, and I highly recommend when touching anybody's exhaust, is to have a pair of gloves on. Of course, they're dirty now from doing some work, you know, but I always clean every machine before it leaves anyhow when I'm done with it. And but the most important thing is that if you excuse me, if you get fingerprints on the pipes, the oils and greases from your hands that go on the pipes, if you don't clean them properly, or if you don't clean them and you run the machine, it gets hot, those fingerprint stains will be on that pipe inevitably, you know, forever. So you don't want to ruin anybody's pipes with your greasy fingerprints. The exhaust gaskets did stay inside of the cylinders. They most likely will be fine. Typically you can reuse them. I do have new ones to replace it, but just saying, if you do have to take off a pipe, very seldom have I ever had to replace the exhaust gaskets. It usually fits snug on there and there's no leaks. If for some reason you take the pipe off and you put it back on with the original ones and you don't put new ones in and it leaks, then get new ones. You know, but chances are you'll be fine. So now that we have the pipe off, I can go ahead and adjust the adjuster on this side in. I will loosen up on this 14mm socket that's up here on the caliper, as well as I'm going to take off this 8mm bolt here that holds on the brake line, just so that we don't have any stress, because we're going to leave the rear wheel and the caliper on, so we don't want any stress on that brake hose. There is plenty of slack here, but if we take that off, it's going to give us just a little bit more slack, a little bit more mobility for when we pull the axle out for the swing arm. And that's probably good enough for now anyhow. You can see the axle on this side, the way that it sits, it's got a cutout where it sits inside that groove. Make sure that when you put the axle back in, it does sit in that groove and seat inside of there properly. And we will tackle that when we get there. And the nut on this side, in which I've already loosened up just so that it wouldn't be crazy for me to do it on camera with one hand. So it's a 27mm socket, same size as the axle nut for the rear wheel. However, you know, the rear wheel can be done with a wrench and or a socket if you get the pipe on first. But so then we're going to be removing these two 8mm Allen bolts, and we're going to also remove this guard here. This one doesn't matter too much because you can sneak the belt in there, but if you take, especially with this upper one off, so we're going to take that off just to give more room around here and stuff when we have to put the belt in. Raise the bike in, we're going to tap the axle back through. One way to do it is to put the nut back on there on a good amount of threads and tap it with a dead blow, or something soft that you can hit it with, or if you get something in the end here, whatever works, as long as you're not ruining the threads. I mean, this would be fine, you know, this extension, whatever's gonna work to bang this through, because chances are that's not going to happen, and you could just push it through with your thumb like I just did. Here's a washer. Obviously it's a very clean bike. Normally that thing's pretty corroded. You can see I already pushed it through very easily though. And the axle is almost out, okay? I don't want to take it out all the way yet because I still do want to loosen up on this, and I want to get this off just for safety's sake, you know. And the guard on the other side, so I'm going to do that now. Before I remove the axle here, I just wanted to show you, with the rear wheel axle removed and your adjusters moved in with this caliper bolt loose, and I took off this, there's all kinds of free play here, okay, for everything to move without having a lot of stress or any stress, so that when we take the swing arm axle out and the swing arm comes apart from the bike, it's not gonna fall away and, you know, create a lot of stress on this cable or anything like that. And we will have plenty of room that way on this side, so that when we remove these bolts here and we get this bracket out of the way, we'll have plenty of room to separate the axle, the swing arm rather, from the frame of the motorcycle, and sneak the belt basically right up through here. You know, when this is not here, you have to have these removed. There's no way to do it. So you have to remove these. We'll jack up the bike. We'll pull the axle first, then we'll jack up the bike, and then we'll sneak the new belt in. So I got the upper belt guard off, and that's just for ease of installing the belt. It's not something that's necessary. A few things I've did are not necessary, but I want to show you them just so you know how to do it, or make it a little easier for yourself. So I have all these 4 bolts loose. Just wanted to show you that these collars in here, we want to make sure that they go back in. So when you pull out these bolts, those collars are going to be falling out, falling down. Don't lose them. Make sure you put them back into the bolt when you install it. It is okay to switch those, as they are different as well. If you take them and you mix and match them, it's okay. They're identical. I'm going to take off these 2 to get the bracket out of the way. Of course, the Allen head goes into the threaded portion, and then the other bolts go into those holes with the spacers. So now we are, and you know what, another thing we're going to have to do, I believe, is remove this shock, the mount here, the bolt here. I think we're gonna have to separate that too to actually get it to move properly. So we're gonna have to take that bolt off as well, I believe. So I will let you know for sure. So as I suspected, I did have to remove the bottom bolt and nut. There's a bolt, comes into the left side of the bike, a washer and nut that goes on the right side of the bike. We removed the axle for the swing arm, came right out, no problem. You can see there's actually no pitting or anything. Actually looks pretty greased and lubed, which is great. And then just want to show you, because it's a little easier to see on this side. On both sides of the swing arm, you're going to have these washers, these seals basically here. You're going to have these seals here. Make sure that they stay on the swing arm. If they fall off, make sure you put them back on. Now that everything is loose, should be able to just grab the swing arm and slide it right back. Probably getting caught on the other side, I would assume. Yep, it's getting hung up a little bit on the brake hose here. Once you get past that, you see that that just fell off. Okay, so once you get past that, that's it. I'm just gonna put it back forward a little bit here. Just so I can stabilize it, because I don't want it to fall all over the place. Sorry, I just kicked my lift. So now that we have it loose, you can see it pulls back completely, but we still have the brake line. Even if you rest it down all the way, still plenty of slack in this brake line, and nothing is has tension where it shouldn't be. So that's it. Now we're going to start by putting the belt on the front pulley, lining it properly with under the belt guard from below, putting it on the rear pulley, and then we'll start putting it back together. And that is the part number for the belt. Again, this is a 2006 Yamaha Warrior 1700cc motorcycle. So don't go by that part number if you have a Raider or a V-Star 1300 or something different. This is for a Warrior. Double check that it would fit your bike with the proper number, but this is for a 2006 Yamaha Warrior. And for whatever reason, and it doesn't matter too much, it seems a little easier for me. It seems a little easier to get the belt in from the front pulley and kind of bring it back. You can see here. Always make sure that you can read the writing, just as a book would be, that it's not upside down when you put the belt on. If this is facing the opposite way, it's because the belt is backwards. So we're just going to push the belt in, continue to push it in, get it on the front pulley, and then get it around the rear pulley. Alright, show you where we're at now. So we got the belt around the front pulley, and again, these, make sure they go back in their spots here. Okay, there's one up here, and another little roller down here. Sometimes it's easier to just stick the pin in instead of trying to go for it all at the same time the top one went in. So that, of course, is not going to be like that once it's tightened on there properly. I don't have it around the rear pulley yet because we want to bring everything else together and bring the rear wheel in. You can see this side is off just a little bit. That's just because it's kind of kitty cornered there, just sitting there. I do have the the lower shock bolt in, which there is a washer on that bolt as well too. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but there's a washer on the bolt side as well as the nut side. So I'm just gonna finger tight put that in. Then we have the swing arm axle, which I cleaned it, wiped it down, re-greased it. Give it a little twist just to make sure that helps some of that grease there move around. Now we know it's a little crooked on the other side, so there we go, it's going to stop. We're going to line this up as best as we can here so that it goes on those notches. And if we have to, we could take something over here to pry slightly, but we might not even have to. Yeah, I could just pick up the swing arm and align it pretty good. I bet if I drop this down a little bit more, that might even help. Drop the lift down a little bit and we'll check it. Sometimes you may need to go down, sometimes you may need to go up, depending on where you are. And that looks pretty good, I bet. Well, can't drive it home yet, but I might need two hands for this, so let's see if I can. Yeah, I'm gonna need two hands. So I figured I'd do it on camera and tap it in, but it's getting caught just a tiny bit, and you definitely don't want to ruin the threads on the axle. So I'm going to do this properly and line it up a little better and tap it through. All right, that was much easier and quicker with two hands. I just kind of pushed on the tire and the axle and the swing arm rather, just a little bit to get that side to come up, and then I just tapped this in the axle, and it's seated fully into those little grooves as you want. You can see the axle sticking out here, so you want to make sure that the washer goes on first and then the nut. We're just gonna spin it on by hand a little bit for now, just to hold it on and hold everything in place, and then we'll torque everything down properly after. And the next step here, I'm going to be putting this bracket back in. So don't forget, when you put the bracket in, the Allen bolts go to the rear of the bracket that will thread into the threaded portions, and the spacers are going to go in between this bracket and the case here. So we're going to get those on, and then we'll be able to you know, start adjusting the belt, getting the belt around the pulley, and then torque everything down properly. Alright, so we still have to put the exhaust on, but I've tightened up the swing arm pivot nut, put the cover on, tightened up all these bolts, the 14 millimeters inside, the one that mounts on the shock. And now we're going to adjust the belt. So where I have it, basically by eye, I started off on the 4th notch here on both sides. Always make sure it's even on both sides of the tire. And then right here at 10 pounds of pressure, we should have 0.3 to 0.51 millimeters. That spec would be 0.3 to 0.51 inches rather. 7.5 to 13 millimeters at 10 pounds of pressure. So if we hit this to 10 pounds of pressure, it's right there. We got probably about an inch or a little bit more the way it is right now. Okay. What you really want is 10 pounds of pressure. You want this to move from this first notch to about that 3rd notch or just above it. If you put 10 pounds of pressure and it goes to that 2nd notch, it's too tight. If it goes up to that 4th notch, it's too loose. So we need to find that happy medium here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the adjusters and we're going to back them out so that it, you know, on both sides, we're going to back it out probably to the 3rd notch, and then we're going to double check it. So I have the axle nut on there, but it's not torqued. So we're going to back this up a little bit. Check that. I'm going to feel, see, it's already actually getting pretty tight. So we're going to stop right there. We're about the halfway mark in between the 3rd and 4th hash mark there. So we're going to back this one up exactly the same, right about there. I'll give it a little feel by hand. It feels like it's going to be pretty good. Now this is the belt gauge that I have. It's made by Motion Pro. There's the part number. 08-0350. Pardon me. Normally there is a little O-ring that goes on here, but that line that is there is the 10 foot-pound mark anyhow. So you just simply put this up against the belt, apply pressure until it hits that 10-pound mark, which is right there, and that is still a little too loose. So I'm going to adjust it a little bit more. I'm just going to go about 2 turns on each side. I'm not going to go a full hash mark. Okay, so right now about a 3 1/4 and about 3 1/4. So we'll double check that now. And that is right about on the money. Before I tightened the belt up, it was hanging a little looser. It was more at this 1st notch. Now it's at the 2nd notch. So we want to go, I don't know how well you can see that. So we want to go about 2 notches there. Okay, so we want to go from here to here to the 4th notch total on it. And that's right about 0.4 inches. And right there's at 10 pounds. I'd say that's really good. I'm going to get 2 hands on it and double check just to be sure, and get a better look at these hash marks, make sure I'm lined up the same. It's always very important that if you're on hash mark 1, 2, 3, whatever you're on here, you're on the same hash mark on the other side. Otherwise the tire is going to be kicked sideways a little bit and the bike's not going to want to go straight like it should. So yeah, I'm going to check that, and then we're going to get moving on to putting the belt guard on. With the new belts too, don't be afraid to have it a little on the snug side. You don't want it too tight, of course, but don't be afraid to have it slightly on the snug side because it is going to stretch. So if you actually have it on the loose side, and it's going to stretch quick, and you're going to need an adjustment fast. So if it's a little snug, it's okay. Don't want it too tight. You don't want this thing like a guitar string, but you do want it to, you know, be tight enough anyhow. But within that spec, like I said, here's the drive spec. It is 0.3 to 0.51 inches at 10 pounds of pressure, 7.5 to 13 millimeters at 4.5 kilograms. That would be on the side stand. On a suitable stand or a little lift underneath, it's going to be bigger because it does make the swing arm hang and the belt loose. 0.55 to 0.83 inches at 10 pounds and 14 to 21 millimeters at 4.5. Now I don't have it on a stand, okay, and I don't have it on the side stand. It's just hanging against my lift. But the difference between it sitting straight up as it is and on a side stand is like 0.01. I mean, it doesn't change the pitch, so don't worry about it. It doesn't change the tension. So whether it's on a side stand or just straight up on a lift, it's fine. All right, so I double checked the tension on the belt. We are good. We are within spec. We are at about 0.38, almost 0.4, between 0.38 and 0.4. So that's right in that margin where you want to be. The axle nut is torqued to 110 foot-pounds. So after we get that, the adjustment right in the belt, we're going to torque the axle to 110 foot-pounds. There we go. And once we've achieved torque, we can tighten up on these lock nuts. Okay, I'm going to do it with two hands after because I do recommend having a wrench on this one, holding slight pressure against the block here, as well as at the same time tightening this, that way it doesn't move. Same thing over here. And so I'm going to do that now and then get the belt guard on. And just a little reminder pointer, when you do adjust the belt, you want this bolt loose so that the caliper will slide with the tire, the wheel assembly. Tighten that back up. I already put this in. Another thing that made it easier to put the swing arm back on was taking off this little bracket for the rear brake hose reservoir. 8mm bolt, just pulled off this bracket and you get a little bit of play off of this hose to bring it back around the edge of the collar on the swing arm there. So then our next step here is going to be to put back on the belt guard, and it's only the bottom two. There's 3 5mm Allen heads, but it's only the bottom 2 that hold on. This one's just a dummy one for looks to dress it up. So then in the manual, the other very important torque on here would be the swing arm axle nut, and that is 90 foot-pounds. So we set the torque wrench to 90 foot-pounds, and we're there. Oh. I don't know why it hasn't clicked. That's weird. It did, then it. There we go. 90 foot-pounds. Double check. All right, there we go. All right. Probably just torqued it. You know, made the click sound because it was probably seating these little collars in a little better, and then I gave it a little bit more, and it went. So 90 foot-pounds on that axle nut. I think let's do this. Those are definitely, I mean, everything's important to torque properly, but this one, the bottom shock, your rear axle nut. Those are the most important ones, I say, to make sure you torque down the spec, because you want all that stuff to pivot and move. These you can really crank down on them in the 14 millimeters. They have the collar on the 14 millimeters, so it's only going to go so far. You're not going to crush anything and ruin anything, as long as you're not going crazy tight with it. And yeah, so now we're going to move on. I already did the shock earlier. I don't remember what the torque was on that, but if I get the spec out of the book, I will I'll put it in the video here. And so now we're gonna put on the exhaust to put the floorboard back on, and we will be done here. Well, we have everything on. We're nice and smooth going back together, no issues. The only thing I didn't put on yet was the floorboard here. Yours might even not have these little mini floorboards. It might even have a peg, because this bike actually came with pegs, not floorboards. So that was aftermarket thought somebody put on there. It's probably why the hardware is different as well. But before I put that on, I'm going to clean the exhaust pipes. You can see how it's all dirty, nasty, just the way it was when it came in. Not really too many fingerprints, if any, from myself working on it, as I was wearing gloves 99% of the time. However, we are going to clean them anyhow, because I clean everything. And I'm going to clean the pipes before I fire it up. And I just use glass cleaner. Glass cleaner works awesome on this chrome stuff. And you know, wipe it down with glass cleaner and some nice blue shop towels, nice soft non-abrasive towels. And then if there's any real rough spots or anything, I'll go with some chrome polish and see if I can get any grimy nastiness off for the customer. And then we'll put the floorboard back together, and this thing will be ready for a test ride. Well, there she is, all said and done. Nice clean pipes. I'm going to test ride it, and then I'll wash the bike after. I'll clean it for a final clean. But that's how you replace the belt on a 2006 Yamaha Warrior motorcycle. Following all those steps and taking off the rear wheel and the caliper, you know, and removing the swing arm completely, that's all you have left to replacing a swing arm if you ever needed to, or if you had to do swing arm bearings or anything like that. Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, basically all the same stuff to do to replace a swing arm or replace bearings or anything like that. Another thing I want to point out is on the all the exhaust bolts, I put a little bit of never seize on them, so that in the future hopefully they'll come out okay, and we won't have to remove any studs or do any you know, broken bolts or anything like that on the exhaust in the future. So next thing to do would be to start it up, make sure there's no exhaust leaks. Check around here, you would be able to hear it. I don't feel anything. I don't hear anything. If there was an exhaust leak, you would probably hear it ticking, and you would probably feel some air around the head pipes where they connect if there was a leak. So seems good. We'll let it run here and idle for a little bit to let it warm up. We'll take it for a test ride, make sure everything's okay. So it seems very good. Everything's nice. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and please give me a thumbs up. Helps out a lot. Hit that subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it helped you, or you learned something by watching it. And if you have any questions, please comment below, let me know. If you have any questions, comments, I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.